Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of the Channel 8 podcast. I'm your host, Sean Go, and today I'm hosting my very first guest, Richie Dos Santos, aka Rich 3D, one of my favorite photographers coming out of Toronto, Canada. Hey, Richie.
Thank you for having me here.
So, for all the listeners, just a little FYI, we had recorded probably 10 minutes of content, and someone forgot to click record. I'm guilty.
I won't name names.
It's one of us. You might know him, but
technical difficulties.
Anyways, but yep, we're back. Let's start things off just talking about shoes because, like I said, obviously I don't want this to be just a sneaker podcast. I want to relate other things like photography. That's why Richie's here, but we all love shoes. So with that said, let's start talking about sneaker pickups of the past week or two.
All right. I would have loved to pick up a few pairs of Dunks, but you know how it goes. Very, very hard to pick up Dunks these days, especially when you're in the GTA. We only have a handful of places that we can actually get pairs from. So struck out on Dunks, but it's okay. Moved on. But last pick up was actually a Nike ID pair. So did a little collaborative pair of Air Max 90s with a group of friends and family, which they turned out I haven't seen them in person yet, but from what we designed online, they look pretty cool. So those will probably be on a timeline near you once you get them in hand. So shout out to the crew, shout out to STFB on putting together that pair. Aside from that, the last pair I actually picked up was in December. Picked up the black and gold patent leather ones just because I love the 2003 mids. Couldn't get those way back in the day. They weren't hard to get. I actually just couldn't afford them back then. So this pair was like a mandatory pair for me to pick up just for like nostalgia's sake. Aside from that, not too much else I've wanted for the year. I've kind of made an effort to say I'm going to cut back on the amount of pickups. I'm saying that for now, knock on wood. We all say that. And then, you get to the end of the year and like there's 30 or 40 pickups. But yeah, just trying to make more of a concerted effort to like cut back.
So is it more like you're actually trying to avoid spending money or you're just not really feeling what the brands are dropping these days?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. Like I said, I would have loved to pick up a few pair of Dunks that dropped this year because they've been pretty fire. Like the Street Hawkers that you have there. Yeah, the pig Dunks, like those are fire as well. But yeah, just really hard to grab. And the other thing is too, like Jordan Brand pushed back a whole bunch of releases that were supposed to actually come out in February, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Like even like those University Blue ones were supposed to drop, like that got pushed back and whatnot. And even like the taupe haze, which someone took a dope picture of. I was actually sitting there, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna grab these, man. Like, kind of looks like the Travis like F&F pair, and then kept looking at them low key. I'm like, okay, yeah, they're not bad. And then somebody took a picture of them. And then I seen it and I was like, here we go again. I'm like, all right, put them back on the radar. So maybe, yeah, by the end of the month when they drop, they drop in like a week or something like that. 2 weeks. I don't remember the exact release date.
End of the month, I think.
Yeah. So those are on my radar now. So that might be my next pickup.
Yeah. So for me, it was a pretty heavy week. It's one of those, you don't realize you got so many shoes in the past week until you write it down on a list because there wasn't really one huge thing that I got, but a bunch of like really dope smaller things. So I got a couple SBs. My first one was the Pink Pig SB. So shout out to Switch Skate Shop located in Ajax, I believe.
Yeah, Ajax.
And then I also picked up the do you remember the Space Tiger SBs from like years back?
Yeah.
So someone was selling their like VNDS pair in my size for a very good price, for a fan price. So picked those up. Add that to the collection finally.
Okay, nice.
Adidas Canada sent me a couple of really dope ZX pairs. So I got the Lemonade ZX 8000, which is super underrated, and then the Simpsons collab with the Krusty Burger ZX 10,000.
Yeah, the Krusty Burger one is the one I looked at and I'm like, I love the colors on those. And it just brings you back to like watching the Simpsons on a regular. I really like that pair.
It legit looks like it jumped out of the pages or out of the screen, from Springfield.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a crazy pair. And then probably the craziest surprise of the week, I got a pair from Bodega, and it was the Adidas Forum 84 High Friends and Family pair.
Yeah, when I saw those, I was sitting there and I'm like, I hadn't seen anything. Like I hadn't seen an IG post, I hadn't seen a rumor, I hadn't seen a blog post, and I'm like, all of a sudden this guy has this pair, and I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah, man, it came out of nowhere. Like UPS delivered something from Bodega. I was like, what is this? Open it up, and it's individually numbered. So there's 333 pairs. I got 168. Shout out to the 8 for Channel 8 podcast.
Yep, it was meant to be. It was meant to be.
But yeah, like huge thanks to Bodega. Like it's such an honor to be considered a friend and family.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
And then a couple of Air Force One pickups from Livestock. I got the 3M black snakeskin Concept Japan pair. What do you think of those?
You know what, I like it. Even though I'm not much of an Air Force guy, I'm not really into Air Force Ones like that, but I can appreciate like a solid colorway. And those are nice. You know, like you can throw those on pretty much. It'll go with everything that you want to wear. So, and then you can't go wrong with having a little bit of 3M on your shoes, right?
So we go from like dark, conservative, and black based to the other Air Force One I got, which is the Valentine's Day Love Letter Air Force Ones.
Yeah, lover boy. Okay, I see you. I see you. No, you know what? Those are nice too, right? Like, and it's you know, for those who couldn't get the Strange Love SBs that dropped last year, and you kind of want to get your Valentine's Day on, like this is like the perfect pair to get.
Yeah, it's one of those shoes where if you don't want to bust out like the Strange Loves, that's a really good alternative. Pretty much looks the same, more or less.
Exactly. You just get in a different silhouette, and you know, probably easier to get in today's climate, right? Because if another Valentine's Day dunk came out this year, for sure you don't stand a chance at getting them.
Zero, man. And then the last one I got is the Stussy Hirachi Desert Oak, like the beige colored one.
Yes, I saw those. That they're nice actually. I like, you know, sometimes it's nice to get a little earth tone kind of shoe, because it's, if you look at it, I don't know, before everything was like trending to be like super loud, right? You're getting like your bright pinks, your oranges, your reds, your greens and whatnot. So to get something a little bit more muted, it's actually not bad. It's refreshing.
Yeah, it's an interesting story behind those. So those released back in 2000. So the two colorways, they both dropped in 2000 at Stussy London store, I believe. And there's like no Stussy branding on the shoe at all. It was just like a Stussy colorway that they had designed.
Okay.
And it's interesting because I've been getting a few comments on my review video on YouTube. People are asking like, where's the Stussy branding? Like it doesn't say Stussy, and they're implying kind of like because it doesn't officially like stamp Stussy on it, they don't really care for it. In my head, I'm like, well, if it's a dope shoe, regardless of whether it has
the branding
on it, like you should be able to mess with it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like for me, it's always like, it's kind of like with the taupe haze, right? It kind of looks like the Travis, but it's not listed as Travis. Like that's fine. But if you think a colorway is dope, then the colorway is dope, right? Just grab it, right? Like think about it the opposite way, right? What if the colorway was crap, but then it's a collab with something? Like, do you really want it that bad? I don't know. Like everybody sits on different ends of the spectrum, but I'm just kind of like, hey, if you like the colorway, just go after it.
Yeah.
But it makes it easier, right? If people are like, oh, I don't want it because it's not branded Stussy, then perfect. It makes it easier for me to pick up.
Yeah.
Right?
And the sad thing kind of is that, to your point, a lot of people will buy a collaboration, even if it's a trash color, because it has that stamp of that, you know, co-collaborator or whatever.
Yeah, no, you see that all the time, right? It's like if, I don't know, I think there was what was it? OVO had a collab with like Jordan Brand. What was it, the Trunner or whatever that was?
Oh, those are terrible.
Yeah, like I think they're awful, but like there's an owl on it and people want it. Like, and I'm just like, no, you couldn't get can't remember how much they were, like 165 or something like that. I'm like, you can't get my 165 for those. Not at all.
Definitely, but not for me either, man.
No.
So for shoes that you've been wearing the past week, what's been on your feet?
A lot of winter boots, actually, just because like we started getting like snow and it was really cold, and I just really didn't want to bust my ass on the ice. So I've been wearing some of my boots. I have a pair of like Converse boots. I was wearing those. I've been wearing some of my Dunks, actually. So my De La Soul lows, I've been wearing those just because SB Dunks, like they can take a beating. You can put them into like any condition and they'll survive. So I've been wearing those.
Are those pretty much your beaters now, or?
I mean, you can call them beaters, but they're still in good shape. Like they're in really, really good shape. But yeah, I do keep those ones by the front door. So I'll throw those on. I have the, if you want to call it, the shattered backboard lows, just because I can never get the highs. So I keep those by the front door as well. And I also have my BHM SB Dunks from, I think it was either 2014 or 2015. I just went and I kind of dug those out because I was like, hey, you know what? Like, I haven't worn these. So yeah, that's been thrown into the rotation, being BHM and everything. So I'm like, yeah, you know what? Good time to wear it. So brought those out.
Cool, man. Yeah, it's good. Snow's coming down. I was pretty much staying at home for the most part. So for me, it was pretty light week. I broke out the Jordan 4 breads. I had like my normal beaters, my white cement threes, black cement
Black
threes.
cement threes. Yeah, we've seen you beat those black cement threes all over the
Those have been
place.
around for a long time and to many places, man.
I can only imagine if those souls could talk.
And then I actually undead stocked the Stussy Hirachis right away.
Okay, yeah. I saw that. I saw that. Those nice.
Yeah,
That's nice.
yeah. So that's pretty much it for me. Hopefully the weather gets a bit better, snow melts, and we can start breaking out some more pairs.
I looked outside earlier and it's actually snowing, and we are getting up to 25 centimeters by tomorrow
Oh
morning.
man.
So anything else that you wanted to break out, that's gonna have to be indoors on the couch.
Yeah, for real. Photo shoots indoors.
Yeah, I mean that's honestly it's one of the things that kind of sucks about the winter time here in Toronto. It's too cold and too much snow to create outside.
So yeah, one of the main reasons why I wanted to invite you onto this podcast is because obviously you're a really good photographer, and photography is something that's huge in my life as well. So a little background to everyone listening about how me and Richie met. So I think we were signing up for a raffle at Capsule for
Yes.
was it the Tiffany Dunk highs, right?
Yep. Yep.
And do you remember what happened? Like, how did we start talking?
So I remember I walked into the store. I was going to enter a raffle, and I decided, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be cool. I'll wear a pair of SB Dunks. I forgot what I was. Was I wearing SBs? I might have just been actually wearing regular Dunks, to be honest.
Wasn't it the rule that you had to be wearing SBs?
I think so. I think so. I'm trying to remember what I was wearing. Yeah, I really can't remember what pair I was wearing right now. And then I looked over and I saw you were wearing, man, I can't remember what pair you were wearing right now, but I saw you wearing a pair, and like you just kind of lingering around the store. So we just started talking. I don't even know how it happened. We just started talking, and then it was just like one of those things where it was like, oh, are you on Instagram? And then you mentioned your Instagram name, but then you mentioned like the name that you're using on like Soul Collector. I'm like, oh, I've seen your stuff before. Like you get featured, like you get featured on the page and whatnot.
Shout out to Elistic on Soul
Illistic.
Collector and Nike Talk.
Yeah, because at that time I wasn't really like shooting, to be honest. Like I had a little camera and I was just taking like odd sneaker picture here and there. I think I got featured like maybe once or twice, but I used to see your stuff on there. I'm like, oh, so this is the guy. So then I think we just exchanged Instagram contacts, and I think we ended up meeting up like a week or two later for the All-Star drop, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was the Gumbo pack. Yeah, so we ended up going out to pick up pairs there, and that's pretty much how it got started. Just sneakers. Like it's crazy. You could just go enter a raffle and then end up becoming friends with somebody like for years and years to come.
So you're saying how you at that time you weren't really, I guess you wouldn't consider yourself a photographer back then, right?
No, so that was back in like 2014. I wasn't really shooting then. But fast forward to actually just a year later, towards the end of 2015, I was actually in between jobs at that time. So I was just like, I need something to take up my time. So I bought a camera, and I was working downtown in financial district. So it always has like amazing architecture and so busy with a lot of hustle and bustle. So I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna go around downtown just taking pictures just randomly. Instagram wasn't really a huge influence at that point for me personally. It was just one of those things. I'm like, I'm just gonna take pictures and learn how to use this camera. So I just like every other day go downtown taking pictures, walking around, and getting some of the cliche shots. CN Tower, of course, you got to have in there. And then after a bit, I'm like, oh yeah, I should double back. Like I have a lot of shoes, so I should take pictures of my shoes that I have. So just started taking pictures of shoes, and just kept going on with that. I'm like, I might as well archive my collection. At that point it was growing. So I'm like, okay, I'll keep doing it. And then I don't know, something hit me, and I was just like, I like taking pictures of shoes, I want to take more pictures of people. So I need to find a way to merge the two. And that's when I started doing like portraits and portrait lifestyle and like streetwear. Big shout out to Corey West for being my guinea pig in the beginning. We both didn't know what we were doing, but it was just like, hey, you have a lot of shoes too. You have gear, so like let's just do this. So the first time we went to go shoot was of course Graffiti Alley, because in Toronto it's like, hey, I need like a really cool like urban scape to shoot in. So Graffiti Alley it is, right? And that's pretty much how the photography thing got booming.
What was the camera that you were first using back then?
Oh, it was a Canon T5i. I went with Canon because actually some of my friends used to shoot Canon. So I guess I should go back and talk about some of my influences. So my friend Chris, who you know, he used to shoot a lot of scapes in Toronto. And I remember like my desktop wall picture, like wallpaper for like the longest time was like a picture that he had taken off the Bathurst Bridge. And he was shooting Canon. So I'm like, okay, Canon must be a good camera. So I'm like, let me just go and get that. So I grabbed the Canon camera and
This is Chris with a K?
yeah,
Like our Chris?
yeah,
Oh, I didn't know he takes pictures.
yeah. Honestly, yeah,
Huh.
he used to take pictures back in the day. So I was always like, I always loved his work, and it was one of those things like that kind of what propelled me to like start looking at cameras even in the first place. And
Wow, I
then
had no idea.
yeah, so even in terms of brand, like yeah, him and his cousin they both shot Canon. So I'm like, all right, let me get Canon, and yeah, just kind of took off from there. Yeah, so one of the things that actually helped me propel my photography once I got into like shooting streetwear and sneakers and stuff like that. There was one time I remember Corey's like, yo, I have this really dope fit. Like, I'm gonna throw it on. I'm like, all right, cool, let's do it. So he threw on a antisocial social club jacket and he had the I think it was Yeezy Belugas and threw that on and we were just like shooting. The shoot was going well. And then I'm like, yo, let's try this one last shot. So we were actually in the middle of the street in Toronto, like downtown. And he decides, he's like, yo, I'm going to sit down on this yellow line. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So he sits down on the line and I take this shot and I'm like, all right, cool. Turns out dope, whatever. It was his birthday. So I'm like, you know what? I just want to shout him out. So I posted it on his birthday. And then all of a sudden, like I woke up the next morning and my phone was hot. And I'm like, why the hell is my phone hot? And all of a sudden, like, it was the notification. So I actually picked up like a feature on Hypebeast and fit rotation for that picture. And it went viral. Like that was like, I guess my breakout moment in like, I think it was 2017. That picture just got featured and it just took off.
Yeah,
And
I
like,
remember that. That was everywhere. It was being reposted on all the major blogs.
yeah. So like that was like from an IG and social media perspective, like that's what helped like catapult me with my photography and gain a little bit more exposure. It was that one shot. So big shout out to Corey for that one.
So it's been 5, 6 years since you started.
Yeah.
What's your current gear setup like now?
So after that camera, I actually bought another Canon. I bought a 5D Mark III, and it was a workhorse. It was going great, but I needed to get something that was going to be more portable. I needed something that was going to be more up to date with its feature list. So I ended up switching over to Sony. I actually just switched over in October. Picked up the Sony A7 III. It's a workhorse. It's a workhorse. It's nice and light. And tons of lens options. So it was a no-brainer to switch over.
And what are the main lenses that you're using now?
Oh man, I mean, I love my 35. Like that's my ride or die. I always have my 35 on me. So I use my 35 1.4. I also use the 85 1.8. Those are my main that I use, especially if I'm doing like any kind of product shots or no, actually no, when I'm doing portraits and product, it'll be 35 85 for me. At times when I'm, doing my streetwear type pictures, I love using my 35. And when I'm doing like product and, close up portraits, then break out the 85 for that.
Yeah, funny enough, I actually picked up the same exact camera as you probably around March of last year. My go-to lens for shoes is 85.
Yeah, that compression, like you can't go wrong with it.
Yeah, like the Sony versus what I used to use. Well, I still use my Nikon now, but comparing the Sony and the Nikon, it's a pretty big change.
Yeah, like the focusing is super, super quick and it's very, very accurate.
And it's so crisp, and the bokeh is ridiculous.
Yeah, like that's the other part. Like I used to think that, some of my friends switched over to Sony. Actually, like 90% of my friends that like shoot, they switched over to Sony. And I was just like, why did you guys switch over? And then I see their work and I'm like, oh, I get it. Because like the majority of my friends, like I was telling you when you were talking about the A7 III, a whole bunch of my friends switched over to it, right? Like so, Rob, he switched over to it. My buddy Sanjeev switched over to it. Joe switched over. Like so many people switched over to using the Sonys because they just work really well and they're small, right?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things. The weight and the size, comparing my D750, the Nikon, to the A7 III Sony, it doesn't, you might not think that it's a lot, but when you're carrying it and walking around and traveling with it, it makes a huge
Oh yeah,
difference.
like I was using a 5D Mark III and the body was like majority metal. So it just felt like a brick when you're walking around with it. Don't get me wrong, it was a fantastic camera. It did what it needed to do. But after a while, like you said, when you're walking around, if you're shooting an event and whatnot, you're at it for like 3 to 5 hours, it gets tiring, man. Even if you're using like my 35 is like all metal as well. So I add that onto my 5D3, I'm walking around with like 6 pounds.
Yeah,
And sometimes you're trying to do like one-handed shots. It's like that's not going to work.
yeah, for sure. So the thing I wanted to talk to you about, one of the main questions I had was, so you're a really good, really talented portrait photographer. You're working with a ton of people. There's different personalities and things like that. How do you find the way to connect with these subjects and bring out like the best of those people?
You have to just connect with a person. I guess I've been on a personal level. So I feel you have to engage in like dialogue that's not like cheesy or corny. You know what I mean? Like you got to find that common ground, that common element that you have with the person. Just kind of work on that, like as icebreakers, just to warm things up. There is a lot of people that I've shot, and legitimately, it was the first time meeting them. You know, and when you meet people for the first time, it's kind of like, okay, how are we going to do this? You know, and you just find different common things to talk about. You might have mutual friends and whatnot, and just make it a lot just make it casual dialogue, you know, and just reassure them that, everything's gonna be okay, that you're not gonna put them into like any compromising positions, like it's one of those things, because especially when you're shooting like Toronto and whatnot, you might end up in the middle of the road or whatever. So you kind of want to make sure that that person that you're shooting feels safe, right? Above anything else, their safety is first. I let them know that we're gonna have fun, we're gonna create some dope work, and you just take it from there. It's just natural ebbs and flows. Sometimes it could just be simple conversations about you're into sneakers, so you end up talking about sneakers, or music is your common ground, so you start talking about music. Like whatever it is to make that person feel comfortable, that's what you do, right? And you let them know, hey, at any point, if something isn't in line with what you want to do or you don't feel comfortable with it, like let me know, right? I'm here to bring out the best in that person. It's not necessarily me just trying to, project everything that I want to do, right? It's even like when I shot you before, right? Like you were saying like your expertise was being behind the camera, right? So even though we were friends, it's like I still have to let you know, like, hey, I'm not gonna put you in harm's way. We're gonna have a ton of fun doing it. We're gonna create some dope images by the end of it, right? And they turned out well in the few times that we've shot together. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
And then when you're looking for locations to shoot, is it just a matter of like, do you reference other people's photo shoots, or do you scout out locations yourself? Like, how do you find those places? Because some of your pictures are in some pretty random spots, which I can't even tell where they are.
Yeah, it's a bit of both. Like, I mean, sometimes like, it's natural, right? When you're on Instagram and different various, social media platforms, you might see a location like, oh, that's really dope, I'd want to shoot there. But the other part about photography is the location scouting part. So, like I said, I used to work downtown in the financial district, and it was just a matter of lunch breaks, after work, before work, just walking and finding alleyways, because I like shooting in urban scapes. So I find like a little alleyway and I'm like, this is it. Like, and I literally will mark it down like in my Google Maps, or I'll make a note of it in my notepad, take a picture of it, because I'll be like, okay, this is exactly what I've seen. I got an idea of what I can shoot here. You see spots and it's just like the light bulb goes off and you're like, oh, this is gonna be dope. This is like really gritty or and whatnot. So I just look at those and I'm like, okay, I can make this work. But a lot of it's just just walking around over and over again. It's you have to know what you want to shoot and then just kind of go from there, right? When you know what you want to shoot, you're able to then place your subjects in those spots and just bring it to life. Bring your vision to life.
It's funny you say that, because that whole blurb that you just said, it sounds pretty much spot on for what I do mentally when I'm trying to find locations to shoot shoes. Like, you get the pair and automatically I kind of had an idea. So for example, like a Valentine's Day shoe, I have like a concept in my head. I kind of figure out like this is the sort of environment I want to put the subject in, which is similar to what you do. And then it's just a matter of either walking around and finding like that suitable location, or in many cases, it's locations where I've already scouted before and I've sort of had that mental checklist, mental rundown of places I can go if I want XYZ sort of feel.
Exactly. And then, you know what the other thing is too, especially like when you're shooting products and shoes, there might be a certain color like that's in the shoe and you're like, oh, I remember this red wall, or I remember this yellow wall. I'm gonna go back there. I remember I was going to grab food the other day and like it had like this really cool thing. So you end up taking your stuff back there.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a photograph. Like as much as like we take a lot of photographs, you have to have like a photographic memory. Because sometimes like even I look at your pictures and it's like there's this like blue wall. I'm like where did this guy go to find this random blue wall? And the hue is like on point. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this. You know, it just adds that little extra piece, right? That little extra oomph.
Mm.
Right? Especially when you like to shoot in urban scapes, you kind of want your scape to kind of line up with the product or the person that you're shooting. You know, so location scouting, I would argue, is just as important as the picture that you take, right? Because the location can actually make or break that shot that you take.
Would you say you're fairly established as a Toronto photographer, or how would you define yourself right now?
I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, in terms of established, I mean, for myself, I just kind of know what I want to shoot and what I like to shoot. You know, in terms of like, say, the Toronto scape, I don't know. I mean, some people might know me, some people might not. For me, it's always just about getting better with shooting, right? I just feel like photography is just a never-ending learning experience. There's always new techniques that you're going to learn. There's always new experiences that you'll encounter. Sometimes you get thrown into a situation where you're just like, you're forced to like learn quickly on your feet. You know, like you might have like a client demand or whatnot, and it's like a little bit outside of what you do. And it's like, all right, that's where you have to learn how to just like adjust on the fly. But I just enjoy what I shoot. You know, like when I finally found a way to blend portraits and blend it with sneakers and just kind of put together and start doing like streetwear and lifestyle type shoots, I feel like that's when I was just like, all right, I'm here. Like this is what I wanted to do. Because when I was shooting street alone in urban scapes, like it was cool, but I feel like that was just like, that was the location scouting part, right? That enabled me now to translate, okay, here are these buildings that I used to shoot. Like now, how am I going to use them? And just switch it up and be like, okay, I'm going to now start doing this type of shooting. And I just love doing it. I love putting it together.
Is it at the point where you consider it like a job, or is it still very much like a passion and hobby?
It's both. I mean, hey, if someone's coming with the Brinks truck, like I'm taking it, right? Like there's no two ways about it. Like you know, your art is worth something, right? And that's the thing that a lot of creators need to keep in mind, is that your art is worth time and money, because you think about what you put into it, right? You talk about location scouting, you talk about obtaining products, you talk about obtaining models, all these things, like all these things take time, and time is money, right? So when it comes to creating, you have to make sure that you get yours as well at the same time, right?
But at the same time, I think it's important for people to know, even though it may become monetized, you never want the money aspect to be the priority over that passion, you know?
Right. If you don't have the love for the game, then it's going to show in your work, right? It's definitely going to show in your work. You will get to the point where you're just like, you know what? I don't enjoy this anymore. It feels like a chore, right? It feels like, you know, I'm not enjoying it. I'm not having fun, and your work will reflect it, right? Because then it just might become cookie cutout. You know, you don't have that same flair, that same passion. You know, your edits might not be as, you know, vibrant or to you. It's just like everything just becomes super regimented, right? So I feel like you know, as long as you still have that fire burning for what you're creating and what you desire to portray, it will keep showing. Like, look at yourself. You're like, however many, I don't even know how many posts deep you are now, but it's like you keep seeing like progressing because you still love sneakers. If you stop loving sneakers tomorrow, your pictures will start showing up like that in about a week or two.
Oh, 100%.
Right? It'll get boring and stale, and it's just gonna be like, he's just going through the motions.
Like I've said this before and I still stand by it now. The day where YouTube and all this becomes more of a chore to me, and the day where I lose that passion to create those the content and the videos and all that stuff, is the day where I'm going to take a step back and announce my semi-retirement.
Yeah, you have to, right? Like and sometimes you need that, like, as a creator, sometimes you have to take that step back, right? Sometimes you have to like realign yourself and say, like, what am I really here for? Right? Like, is it because I'm just here for the paycheck? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. If that is what you're, right? Because some people, like, it's your daily bread, like you need to survive. I totally understand that.
For sure.
But
Definitely not.
when it starts off as like a passion thing, you need to you need to regain that passion. And so sometimes you do need to take a step back for like a week or two or whatnot, and kind of regain yourself, and then say, okay, look, I'm back at it. Right. And I'm going to give it my 110%. But yeah, if you lost a passion for sneakers tomorrow, like, well, there goes Channel 8, and, there goes the YouTube page, and there goes the IG. I mean, hey, I won't fault you for it, but if you recognize it, I think that's the part that makes the most amount of sense. It's like, all right, so what do you do from here? Like, do you rebuild? Do you rebrand? Like, there's so many different ways you can go about it. There's no real wrong answer, but I hear you on the semi-retirement part.
It's going to become a family channel or something.
Oh my goodness. Could you imagine that the Channel 8 family podcast? Like, this guy goes from giving like sneaker advice and reviews and all that to like family stuff. That's a trip.
10 things you can surprise your wife with on Valentine's Day.
Right? And it's not going to be a pair of the Air Max 90s.
Oh no. Yeah, anyways, but I wanted to pick your brain about tips for aspiring photographers and anything you can share with us.
I mean, photography is so wide open these days, and it sounds cliche, but it's very true. The best camera that you have is the one that's available to you. So in terms of gear, like, sometimes people like being gear junkies and they want to run out and buy like the best of the best right away. It can be very overwhelming. So I'd say just make use of whatever camera you're comfortable with. Like, some people do cell phone photography and it's amazing, right? I've seen some cell phone photographers and they take really, really good pictures. If you're good with it, then use that. And if you are going to, go into like the mirrorless DSLR market, do your research, set a budget, stay within that budget, because there's always room to upgrade, right? Source places like Kijiji, pick up used stuff if that works for you as well. Then from there, kind of see what you like to shoot. I mean, you could start off with shooting everything if you like. You could start shooting street, people, whatever it is. But if you already know, oh, hey, I want to do portraits, then tailor your gear towards that, right? Like, pick up a 50 millimeter lens, right? That's a great portrait lens. I feel like most photographers have a 50 mil in their kit somewhere. Even if you don't use it every day, it's just there. So yeah, tailor your gear towards that. If you have friends with similar hobbies or interests, like with photography, like, reach out to them, right? Don't feel that you can't reach out to them because like they're established or whatever. Like, no, if they're your friends, or even if there's somebody you see on IG, like, reach out to them, say, hey, do you mind if I tag along to a shoot one day, whatever? Because, that's how you gain the experience. What else can I say? Don't get bogged down by like trying to edit a certain trendy way. That
one's huge. Yep.
Yeah, like I see a lot of people, like, their composition is great, but then what happens is that they end up using the same kind of edit and tones and presets that other people use, and what happens, your work just gets caught in the mix. You just can't differentiate. Like, everybody's work ends up looking the same, right? Meanwhile, you went out of your way and composed it a completely different, unique way, but your edit looked the same, so it gets lost in the mix. So work on just playing around with the sliders, whatever your editing app you're using. If you're using, Lightroom, Photoshop, Snapseed, like whatever it is that you decide that you want to use, like, play around with it. Watch YouTube videos and tutorials on, how to, what the different sliders do. Take it step by step. And the last thing is probably the most important thing that we touched on. Enjoy it. Have fun with it.
Yeah.
That's the only way that you're going to get better. Like, if I didn't enjoy taking pictures of people, if I didn't enjoy taking pictures of sneakers and those kinds of things, I wouldn't be where I'm at today, right? And the other thing is, don't let other people influence like what you shoot. Like, I'm sure you can probably attest to this, when you tell people that you're taking sneakers in your backpack to go to like some random like location to go shoot.
Yep.
People are like looking at you like, what's wrong with you? Like, don't you just wear shoes? Like, why are you taking them out and like putting them out in public and taking pictures of them? Like, people think you're nuts. Like, you're not nuts. Like, you're doing what you love to do and you enjoy it. And it's like, I remember, I've had people say stuff like that, and then all of a sudden they open their email and like, I'm in like the Foot Locker like email blast, and I'm like, oh, how did that happen? And I'm like, that's what happens when you take pictures of sneakers in a park. You never know, you could end up getting featured somewhere one day, right?
Trust me, the amount of looks and comments I've gotten just when I'm out with shooting shoes, it's yeah, you could definitely write a book on that.
Oh, it's, and the thing is like you're always looking over your shoulder because it's like sometimes you're pulling out some heat, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah, that too.
it's like, and that's when searching for those alleyways comes in clutch because then you're away from like the public eye, right? Like I remember pulling out like my Travis ones to shoot one time, like in an alleyway, and I was just like looking over my shoulder the whole time. It's just like, oh, but like I said, you just never know where your work can end up taking you, right? Like I didn't expect that like I would have been like on an email blast for like Foot Locker or end up on their website and stuff like that. But when you're shooting and you're passionate about it, like don't let anybody take that thunder away from you.
Cool. Amazing, man. Yeah. Thank you so much for those tips. And I guess that pretty much wraps things up. Anything else you want to add?
I just wanted to say, yeah, if you have any photography needs, head over to at Rich3D on Instagram. Check out my work. Love hearing from people. Also like working with new people and like, so yeah, hit me up. And also on top of that, thank you very much for having me on here. It's a pleasure. I've had the pleasure of watching you grow from like your different mediums. I watched you grow on Instagram, and then I remember when you told me you were going to do the YouTube thing. I was like, all right, let's see how that goes. And then almost at 100K, and I'm like, all right. And then it's like, all right, here's the third wave, right? Here's the podcast. So it's the trifecta. So all the best with the podcast. I like where you're going with it.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, just for anyone who's listening, like Richie's been a good friend now for 5-6 years, and definitely we have that mutual respect for each of our work, and definitely glad to have him on the podcast, and glad to have him as a friend.
No, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
So for anyone listening, you can find me on Instagram at esco8, on Twitter at sean.go spelled out, and on YouTube at youtube.com/seango. So that pretty much wraps up episode 3 of the Channel 8 podcast featuring Rich 3D. And you can find this podcast on most of the places where you find podcasts like Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean. And until next time, thank you all for listening. Catch you guys all in the next episode.